Good evening, members and guests, for tonight's Licensing and Safety Committee meeting. I have apologies for absence. Councillor Printer.
Yeah, I'm subbing for Councillor Howcroft-Scott.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Printer. Can I sign the record of the meeting held on the 9th of December 2025 as correct? Is that agreed, members?
Agreed.
Agreed. Sorry, Councillor Fern. Is Councillor Kemp? Is he here, or apologies? Or are you not sure? Okay. There are no urgent matters. Are there any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest or other significant interest in tonight's agenda, members? Victor, thank you. Before I go on to item 5, can I just say we've got Nigel here, all of you know, from the MLTDA. He asked myself and the Vice Chair whether he could speak on item 6 this evening. We agreed that we thought it wouldn't be a problem for members. Is that agreed with members that he speaks tonight? Is that okay?
Agreed.
Welcome, Nigel. Going over to item 5, pavement licensing update. Emily.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm presenting to the committee the pavement licensing update report, which outlines recent work undertaken to strengthen Medway's approach to pavement licensing enforcement and the development of a clear enforcement procedure and the proposed operational strategy for 2026-27. So I undertook a review of this area of work following the December committee meeting, where the licensing team were asked by committee to review the enforcement process following reports of issues relating to illegal pavement furniture and obstruction of the footway in busy areas of Medway. My review identified that while licensing officers were visiting premises and issuing verbal warnings, there was no formal mechanism in place to confiscate unlicensed furniture or store it. No written notices or warnings were being used and enforcement was inconsistent. So myself and officers have conducted a desktop study of legislation and local authority practice to come up with an enforceable procedure. And a key development was an agreement in principle with Medway Council's street scene enforcement team to undertake collection and storage of unlicensed furniture on a cost recovery basis. The report updates members on progress made to establish a clear and effective procedure for enforcing Medway's pavement licensing policy. It highlights the work undertaken by officers to address enforcement gaps and proposes a formal enforcement strategy for the committee to consider. The proposed strategy aims to ensure businesses comply with the licensing requirements and understand their responsibilities. We plan to run a communications campaign around April, which will promote licensing requirements and highlight penalties for non-compliance. After Easter, licensing officers would undertake targeted days of action, focusing on high-risk areas and locations with reported issues. Where breaches are found, officers can issue a formal warning notice, which would give businesses 7 days to remove their furniture. If they fail to do so, the street scene enforcement team from Medway would carry out a visit and then may remove and store the items and update licensing accordingly. Businesses would then have to pay a fine if they want to get that furniture back. So this report demonstrates that significant progress has been made to establish a robust enforcement process for pavement licensing, addressing previously identified gaps, and the committee is asked to review the report and provide views on the proposed strategy, which will support safe, accessible public places and improve compliance among local businesses. So I'd invite the committee to ask any questions and make any comments in relation to the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Members. Councillor Fern.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Emily, for the report. There's a few questions I've got, and I don't mind taking them one at a time or doing whatever's easiest for you. In 2024, when we were sold this policy, when it came to us, we were told, and I quote, "It's faster, cheaper process for businesses," but yet we've only got 10 businesses that have got their street licence. You know, it's quite a low number, given that this was going to help everything. It was going to speed up the process and whatever else. And I know this question might be difficult because of current weather conditions and this time of year. But how many businesses do we estimate are not complying currently? So that's the first question. Do you want me to do an answer or okay?
Thank you. So in terms of how many businesses are non-compliant, it's difficult to quantify, but from the reports that we get from the public and from businesses, there are premises that are non-compliant. And in terms of the number of businesses, it's one of these situations where if they are not feeling that there's enforcement happening around the pavement licensing, the incentive to apply for a pavement license may not be there. So it's difficult because if they want to put this out, if they want to put stuff on the street, they may just be doing it at the moment without even realising what they need to do, which is why we've come up with this with strategy, because we need to get our officers and obviously Medway officers out on the streets to actually educate and to get, you know, the businesses to understand, which is why we're also doing the comms campaign first, because we want them to understand, look, this regime is in place, you need to have a licence. If you don't have a licence, X, Y and Z, then that's what's going to happen. And hopefully that's going to get the message out that they need to have that in place, which previously I don't think has been strong enough.
And so, sort of, I guess, based on that and what your sort of opening comments when you sort of introduced the report about the street team on a cost recovery basis, I mean, do they have the time, resources and storage for all of this? I mean, that would be a concern of mine.
Yeah, we've organised all of that. So we've got all of that organised and they've agreed to that because basically they've been doing quite a lot of work working with the local businesses in the towns already. It's been one of their priorities. So they were quite keen to get involved because it meant that they could continue to work with the businesses they've already built relationships with. So that actually worked quite well for us. We're hoping that building on those good relationships should help to make sure that this new kind of procedure falls into place a lot more easily and they can communicate that to the businesses as well.
Okay, one more, Chair, if that's okay. It's just around the timing, really. You know, we're obviously expecting a lot more trading come over the Easter period and April. I mean, is that the right timing? You know, we want our local businesses to succeed and thrive, and we want to encourage them to grow and to, you know, to be supported. And it just seems like you know, a bit of a sort of rough time, really, to throw that on them. So. You know, when your officers are going to go around and they're going to issue the notice, are they going to, you know, they're going to be a little bit lenient at first and say, you know, you've got these 7 days to comply, but, you know, we're not going to be strict going, you know, 2-footed straight away, are we?
Yeah, so actually this was something that the environmental enforcement team did bring up, and they talked about obviously the businesses that they've been working with and how they've been building those relationships and how important that was. And we did agree that when this first sort of starts to roll out, there is going to be a period of education that's going to need to happen. I think what's important for members to realise is that the notice that's contained within the report is not an enforcement notice. I think it's really important to realise it's a warning notice. So it doesn't affect their statutory rights. It is just a warning. It's not actually enforcement. So it has got that leeway within it. So although there's the 7 days, that's not statutory period. It's not something that has to be fixed. And because we've got the environmental enforcement team on the ground there who do know those businesses a lot better probably than we do. We know some of them, but they know, you know, a lot more of them. I think that they will be able to work that in a fair way, if that makes sense.
Okay, and the last point, Chair, really, once we get into the next like council cycle year, come, you know, May, can we have a report back from you? You know, how progress is going. I don't know if we can add that to the recommendations at the end, Chair.
I'll pick that up when it comes over to me. Yeah, definitely. Councillor Brown.
Thanks. A couple of things, Emily. In your thanks for the report, by the way. But when you were introducing it, you said there's a fine. I can't see where that is.
Yeah, essentially, it's the cost of storage.
Sorry, that's not a fine. That's not a fine. Legally, that's not a fine. It's a fee. Right?
Yeah, fair.
So for clarification, there is no fine with this.
Yes,
So-
there's no legally set fine. It's a fee that is payable if they want the release of the furniture.
Fair enough. The notice says that we can pick up the furniture pursuant to the Act. So we're either going to do this or we're not. But maybe we have to have a sensitivity around it like we've had on some of the other things like school streets or bus lanes and things like that when we implemented. Is that what you meant in your response to Councillor Fern?
Yeah, and like I say, I think that's where Medway's expertise will come in, because they will have a more of an awareness around local situations that we wouldn't necessarily have. And each warning notice that's issued would then be notified to the enforcement team, who would then look at that. And the idea is that we would work in partnership with them very closely. So if they picked up that we'd issued a warning notice in an area that was sensitive, they would let us know at the next catch-up about those warning notices to say, actually, maybe this isn't appropriate. We know what's happening in this area. You know, we can perhaps deal with this in a different way. But that's why we've got that joint working, which I think is essential, really.
So that does bring me on to another question. Will enforcement be automatically notified that you've issued warnings and where they're at so that we can help that?
Yeah, that's right. So what will happen is that's why we're doing it on specific targeted days, because if it was, you know, ad hoc, it would be very difficult to do that. So the idea is that it would be condensed. They will then be able to issue those warnings, and then that list of warnings will be immediately communicated to the enforcement team. So they will have that in sort of real time, what's been done on what day. And to be honest, they're quite keen to attend anyway with us. So the chances are they're actually going to be there at the same time.
Thank you very much.
Is there any other members? Councillor Nestorova.
Thank you for your report, Emily. I have a question. So this enforcement team comes, so they collect the furniture. If the furniture is not collected within 3 months, it will be disposed or sold. Do they still pay this fine after?
No.
Okay. So the council will pay for storage. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Peake.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to check I've got the right flavour of this. Am I right in thinking that whenever an officer sees in any intervention, that's the right word, to do with pavements and so on, they don't go in like the Grim Reaper, because we do all want to collectively support our businesses. So am I right in presuming that the very first step is one of dialogue, support and encouragement, rather than just going bam, bam? I just want to make sure that's the approach being adopted. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think the key here is that there will be a period of engagement, communication and education in the beginning. We want to ensure that businesses are aware of their obligations to apply for a pavement licence, preferably before they start to put a lot of stuff on the pavement. Because, you know, we don't want to prohibit walkways. We want to make these places accessible for everyone, which is really important. So yes, there will be that period of education leading up, and no, there won't be any charging in and heavy-handed enforcement. Like I say, this is not an enforcement notice. So yeah, that's not the plan.
Thank you, members. Emily, I'm just a bit confused. So who's going to be checking the compliant businesses? Who's going to be doing that?
Initially, the licensing officers. The licensing enforcement officers from Gravesham will be going out and they will be checking the businesses, because they know which businesses have a licence and which don't. They will then be able to issue warnings or talk to businesses that don't have licences. And then after that, that will be communicated to the environmental enforcement team, who will then take over, because they've got the means to collect and then store, but also they want to do that kind of more holistic work.
So do you think, because this is almost like a relaunch, right? So I'm a bit worried about those that have been in the scheme already, and also we're relaunching it. But I'm also concerned about capacity. So do you really realistically feel that you're, at this moment in time, your licensing team are busy with licensing? And I'll come to the environmental team in a moment, because they're flat out too. They need to be doing a lot more stuff, and they need to be around in the wards, and they're overloaded. Do you feel that you have the capacity to do these weekly, monthly checks? Because you're going to have to do it all the time, especially during the summer months when people are all of a sudden putting the table and chairs outside. How often are your team going to be going out?
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Basically, when I've looked at this, I've had to take that into consideration, which is why I've had to come up with targeted days for enforcement. If I had allocated this to the licensing team and said, oh yeah, you've got to do this as part of your day-to-day, you're absolutely right, that would not fit. So the targeted days does allow them to be able to fit that into their routine. And we have got plans at the moment to sort of review staffing with an aid to try and help that, because the whole idea is to try and get more enforcement work being done, because it is important. And so, yeah, the frequency, I think probably there will be a higher frequency during the summer period, purely because that's when the issue, it's no point doing every week in December. But I think that we've also got to look at it from the point of view of, feedback. I do believe that once we've done this once or twice, we're going to start getting a lot more feedback about who's doing what. We're going to see a lot more, complaints, for example, coming in, service requests. It's going to start that conversation. And so what I think is going to happen is when we come to the next targeted day of enforcement, even if that's a month down the line, we're going to have a lot more intelligence to where we can target that enforcement the next time. It's not going to be as... So
I'm just a bit worried because obviously it's a resource, it's for, it's for you and Mark and that, but and I'm not asking your team to come in on it, but your team are flat out with licensing issues at the moment. We know that they're coming through all the panels. We know they're coming through. There needs to be tons more enforcement on the taxis and the illegal taxis coming in, and now you've got the pavement licensing, right? It's a real concern, and my big concern is, and just before you come back, Emily, I just think when I keep hearing about the environment team, I think we should have had Ian and that here tonight. I think it would have been better because I'd like to. Have you signed a contract together? Have they signed a partnership agreement with you to say they're going to be going out and doing all of this? Because they are absolutely at their, they are overloaded with the environmental work, and and I know we keep calling it enforcement. It's not enforcement, is it? This is it. You've been, it is in your eyes, I know. Like, from a licensing perspective, I get it, but we're not finding these individuals, and what I've said. Mark knows I'm going to say it. I've said it before. I just wish the other team in the environmental team, they get their act together and start doing all these fruit and veg shops that are taking up more room than a table and chairs and a coffee. We seem to be, I know we agreed this back in 24, but we seem to be hitting the little cafe with a table and chairs. Or, for example, bike shop in Gillingham that's had their bikes outside for 30 years and told they better take their few bikes in, because it's blotting up the road. And yeah, 10 fruit and veg shops down that road could have their stalls right out in the middle and no one cares. And what I'm worried about, that's not your role, thankfully, because that'd be another job for you. They are about to bring in licensing for that. And I don't know how that team, because Tony and the team are going to be checking all them studs and checking everything for that. How are they going to be doing this? I'm just worried. What I'm trying to say is you've got to put this through for review and it's fine. I'm just saying to members, it started off as saying at 24, but is it really worth it? I'm beginning to feel, is it worth it as a policy? Because I don't think it is. We're not getting no, okay, you'll get your license money, that's fine. We're not doing no enforcement. We're trying to, which we should do, try and speak to them nicely and try and make sure it don't happen. We don't got enough teams to be out there chasing them and policing them anyway. What's the point of it? I'm sorry, that's.
yeah, thank you. I think, no, I appreciate your comments, and I appreciate that you also understand how much pressure our team are under, because you're absolutely right, and that's our team. I will say that I did invite Tony and Ian this evening, but I didn't hear back from them, so they were invited. But yeah, we have got a verbal agreement. To be honest, I do believe that over this summer period, I think that they will be involved. I feel confident that they will. And what I would suggest is that, we do go ahead with the plan. And then, as Councillor Fearn suggested, we review this, having done that, because then I believe that we have done everything from all angles. And I believe that we've done probably what was right in terms of our part to play in ensuring that our high streets are accessible for everyone and making sure that pavements are clear where they should be. And then look at it again with a view to deciding the future of it as a whole?
I agree with what you're saying, Emily, but I think the high streets are not clear because they're full up with everything else. So, I don't, I believe we should have a regime to make sure this does, to make sure that these people do it correctly. But we all speak to shopkeepers and they're really, really fed up that, cafe owners, they're fed up. It's pretty hard as it is at the moment. And the feedback I've got and feedback other members are getting is that the first thing they do, and there's councillors around here, I'm sure I speak to their cafes, they point to the shop 2 doors away that are taking up half of that road, right out into the middle of like I'll give you an example, Gin and My Street, they're in the middle with their onions and everything, they're out in the middle. And you've got a verbal agreement with Tony and Ian. I wish you would have told me because they'll be at they'll be at our next meeting. They'll be here. I will make sure they come here because Councillor Fern and others have got questions to ask. They will be at the main meeting. And if you'd have told me, honestly, I would have made sure they're here. Because they're overloaded. They are absolutely overloaded. But my big concern here, members, is you guys are overloaded. I can't see. It's a lovely policy written down and you've reviewed it and you've tidied it up really well. I'm going to say you really have. And I love the bit about the going out, pushing it, the comms campaign. You ain't got the capacity to do that. And Ian and Tony haven't got the capacity and they're 4 people to do it. I'm talking about the other teams now. You don't have to talk about it, but I can, you are the managers, you and Mark, but I cannot see your team being able to do all of this because what you don't want me to do is you don't want us at a licensing hearing panel saying to you, where have you gone wrong on this hearing? Not that you often do. And then because we were busy, then, I don't want to hear that because the licensing is your main objective, right? But we're not even enforcing these people. We're putting it into storage. We're not doing any fine. We're not doing anything. So,
I wanted to comment.
yeah, I'll just come back to Councillor Brake for a minute. Councillor Brake?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the report. I'm very interested in the comments that have been made and the fact that we have to help and safeguard our businesses. So there's no doubt. But it sounds as though we really do need to look at the capacity that we have and find out where the gaps are. And I would suggest, I'm going to take this completely to the side and say that one of the things that I've been involved in within the community over the last few years has been a non-visible disability initiative here in Medway. And the example that's always used about non-visible is to say, well, look, we recognise that if somebody is walking along the road and they have a white stick, then it's recognised that this is an individual who's got a visible impairment. The number of times that I've been challenged in walking along Rochester High Street by people that know me and I know them, and some of them have had visible impairments and have said, what are you doing as a councillor about all of this furniture that is in the on the pavement? This is Rochester High Street that Monday through to Friday is accessible by vehicles. We know that people walk along the high street on the road simply because there's nowhere else for them to walk, because the pavements are jammed solid with all of the shops. And it's not necessarily the cafes that are pointing you, come in here and have your cup of coffee or your tea or whatever. This is all of the shops pointing in the direction of the business that they have. There are display boards, there are the tables, there are chairs, you name it, it's all there. And believe me, I've been with people with visible impairment and they've checked along the high street and they've invited me to do the same. And the truth is, I'd be absolutely petrified to have a mask put over my eyes and given a stick and told, now you do what we have to do and walk up this high street and do so in a safe way. Because I know it's not possible, and I don't think anyone here with and I know we're all involved with the councillor, but the safety of our people is also paramount. Yes, let's look after the businesses, but I think number one priority has got to be the safety of our community. And I don't believe that we are tending to do that. So I do believe that we've got to find the capacity, and if we haven't got the capacity, we've got to identify what is required. And we have to have people that will go along the high streets and will be prepared from the council to go into the shops and say, look, you're going to have to move that sign, you're going to have to move those tables and move those chairs around because you are forcing people to walk in the road. Now, it not only applies to people with the sight impairment, but people with young children in buggies. The only way they can walk along the high street is to walk literally on the road. So this is something that's got to be addressed. Yes, let's look after the business, fully support that. But heaven forbid, if somebody has an accident and it's been shown that we've been looking at this as an issue, we are going to be lampooned. So I do believe that this has got to be a priority. We need to sort it. We need to get businesses on our side. Because if somebody does get injured, Medway Council are immediately going to say, well, it's that business. They've got all that stuff out on the pavement. And the businesses are going to turn around and say, well, Medway Council looked at this, but well, nobody's really been along. Nobody's really reinforced the ruling. So we're just carrying on. We got to survive. But equally, so have our community got to survive. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Brake. Councillor Peake, I'm going to bring you in. It's on the paper, the pavement licensing paper. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't see it in there. Forgive me if we've been told already. The measurement about what's deemed to be a suitable width. The way I think of it is as in how many people. And I've come from somebody who's worked in care, pushed somebody along in a wheelchair. That's one thing. But I've supported people when I've held their arm and supported them. And if I'm not holding their arm, they will fall over. And also, if you notice when people are blind, the way they use a white stick or have a blind dog, if that's the right term, you quite often actually really, to be safe, and need 2 widths of people. So I'm just wondering how it's measured, please.
I know we're looking at the licensing part of this, so Emily,
Yeah,
do you want to
can
just
I-
answer Councillor Peake?
Can I defer this question to Katie?
Yeah, so any pavement licence should have tapping rails surrounding the perimeter of the tables and chairs, and there needs to be a 1.6 metre. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, now I can hear it. Sorry. So, so any pavement licence that's issued correctly has a tapping rail around the surrounding area of the tables and chairs. There also needs to be a 1.6 metre from the tapping rail to allow pedestrians to walk around the tables and chairs.
Thanks, Councillor Peake. Councillor Jackson.
This is probably a really idiot question, but I'm just visualising this in my head, and there is no real enforcement. So we go in there, and then how I don't even know how we enforce it to take the tables and chairs. Someone's sitting down there having a cup of tea and you come in and go, no, we're taking them chairs. Or I don't even, or are you going to wait there as the shop opens before they've even put the stuff out and go in there? Just that alone, surely a policy trying to build relationships with everybody and having sensible talks is a lot better. Because we're just, even if we take the stuff, we're just going to store it probably at our cost and then get rid of it. I don't understand the whole policy, so sorry.
And I mean, Emily, you can answer, but we haven't taken any away, have we? I mean, do you want answering? Your team won't go in and kick someone out of a chair, would they?
Yeah, I was going to come back and say, obviously, we haven't done it yet. So until we start doing it, we won't know exactly how that's going to work. But what I would say, though, is, which I think is benefit to answer, is that within that piece of legislation, it's clear that we can issue a warning notice and give them notice that we will remove that furniture. So that part is within the legislation. So that part, we do have legal backing to actually do that. So although it's not enforcement for enforcement's sake, there is legislation that backs up us actually doing that. So that isn't something that's kind of just us doing it, if that makes sense.
Thank you. And there's no such thing as a silly question, Councillor Jackson. It was a good question. No such thing. It's fine. It's fine. Yeah, let's hope no one, like, even the person's being thrown in the back of the van. You can imagine, can you? Councillor Brown, you coming in finding one?
Yeah. Emily, my question is actually about the legislation and what we can do. And can we have any other redress rather than taking the furniture? Because that's going to end up with a cost. And I think Councillor Nestorova alluded to this. If the people don't want to pay the fees, they just don't. Does the legislation give us any flexibility around any other kind of redress?
No, none.
I can't see. Yeah, well, I don't see the sense of this at all then. Thank you.
I mean, can I just ask one question around, you know, it's not made as bundles of money, right? So it's not as if it's a money-making scheme when there's 10 people in it, 10 businesses. So there's no necessity for every council to have this, is there?
There's not. However, I would caveat that if we did remove the policy, the consideration would need to be what would the result of that be in terms of your concerns, which you already rightly have about the amount of stuff on the pavement. Actually, if we take this away, which albeit not a huge deterrent, but will be and probably will increase in deterrent as we go on with this project, actually the result of that could make the problem worse.
I agree. I think, you know, I'm just speaking on from Gillingham High Street point of view. Our issue on Gillingham High Street isn't the table and chairs. I never bump into a table and chairs. I bump into fruit and veg. Don't bump into anything else, or brooms and mops and everything else in the street. But you know, I think it's pretty clear. There's been a suggestion. I think we would. I think I don't see. I really don't see the point of it. But if it is gonna carry on, and we all voted this in, so you remember that, we're to blame. But I think I need Ian and Tony here before we agree this review, the note in this report. And I just want you to take away. It's nothing to do with your rewriting of the report and trying to make it more streamlined. It is purely around resourcing and the confidence around that other teams are going to fully help and support, because I certainly believe that will be an issue going forward. Did you want to come back, Emma? You can do, but I'm going to pass a resolution anyway. You can come back.
Thank you. All I would say is that I appreciate that. We would like to be able to educate the businesses this summer anyway. If we can educate them and do comms around this, I think that that's still important for us. So we would appreciate if we would be able to do that over the summer period, despite obviously the specifics within the review and the enforcement perhaps being put back to a later date.
I don't think we're not halting the policy because the policy's there. This is a review. This is you coming back with an update on the policy. But I think the members do need to look at the policy, I think. But we're going to get them back in May. So they're back on the 28th of May. So we make sure they're here for that. It doesn't stop you and your team going out and trying to get another couple, but you've only got 10. So I don't think there's a big rush for it. So your policy carries on, doesn't it? It doesn't impact us. Just be aware, though, probably with the way that the challenge will go, is that there will be challenge around this and all about resourcing. And actually, is it got enough to worry about with other policies coming down from above? His members are happy to defer the note in, and we will call back the Ian and Tony for the next meeting to get some reassurance from them as well. And you never know, they might give you more than a verbal reassurance. You might get, you know, I'd like to see some handwriting on a contract, but that won't happen because they're too busy. Was that Mark? Come on, come back.
Thank you, Chair. It's not a formal signed contract, but we do have an SLA in place with them, with confirmation in writing via email as well as a verbal. So we didn't want to make it any more formal and get into the realms of exchanging of funds, and wanted to join up instead.
But can I just say, I've got no doubt that they will always help you, because them guys always help. But again, when we're talking about resourcing, you want to make sure that doesn't just slip away all of a sudden, and then you're stuck. Then you'll be coming back in next year and be saying, what have you done now? Nothing, you know, it's just about that. But for 10, but you know, it's not real enforcement, is it? It's unusual for you guys, not really, so, yeah. Anyway, okay, is that agreed, the deferral? And we'll call Councillor Byrne?
Can we, are you, Emily and Mark, are you happy to defer this for now and then come back again?
What's that? Well, we're the committee here. Mark and Emily, Mark's smiling. I mean, look, they're never always, you know, you guys are not always going to be happy with what I come up with. But if we don't get the reassurance we need, it's going to keep coming back. I mean, I'm more than happy for you to go out and carry on, but when we cancel the committees, there won't be no more cancelled committees, because I'll call you back and I'll ask you what's going on this week with this month, what's going on all summer, all the months. I'll say, is it going well? How's it going? Been busy on everything else, you know. I need that reassurance, Councillor Fern. I'm not reassured. I'm reassured on the restructure is really good, the rewriting of the paper, because you've totally taken out all the rubbish from it and got clear direction of how you're going to try and do that. I've got no doubt about that, but I don't want it being sabotaged or falling down. The team can still carry on with the plan. I just want reassurance from Environmental Services that are going to help, and maybe even from the Cabinet member about enforcement.
No, sorry, obviously, Chair, I just asked the question because obviously I know Emily's spent a lot of time and effort on this, and I agree with you. I do. I'm on the same page as you here. But, you know, go back to what I asked initially about, you know, if we do carry on, you know, we get a report back in May anyway. So, you know, I'm happy to support your proposal. I'm happy to support that. But at the same time, I'm happy to go ahead as well and then come back in May and review.
But I've already said to Emily as well, more than happy for her to keep going out and talking and sending the teams out. You might come back at the end of May and tell us that that's all gone wonderful, and Ian and Tony be saying here that it's brilliant. There's another 50 licences. So I think it's a real good opportunity and chance to show it, but let's just do that for you, and let's make sure that that the team are gonna help. That's what we're doing. Councillor Brake.
Sorry, Dan, one last word, really following on from what I was saying earlier. I do believe that the community of Medway and visitors to our towns will applaud Medway Council if we can undertake to protect our visitors, protect our community, to make sure that they are not subjected to accidents and, heaven forbid, even something worse because of people not looking after what should be ours and what should be done correctly.
Thank you, Councillor Brake.
Thank you for that.
Councillor Brown, have you got what I've said really? The extra bit? Got it all written down?
No.
Okay. Members, are you happy with what I've said? We're thanking Emily and the team for the report, but for more, we're just seeking more clarification on it. So not ready for a review to go through Cabinet or that yet, or Council, but you can carry on with whatever you're doing, and we do that. Is that agreed? Agreed, thank you. And you're seconding it, Councillor Fern, yeah? Thank you very much. Thank you, members. Thank you very much. Thank you, Emily. No 6 minutes for us tonight. Item 6, we're now moving on to, members, which is, if someone's going to help me here, the post-consultation review of the Hackney Carriage and Private Hire Licensing Policy. Emily. Katie, over to you, and then I will ask you to come in, Nigel.
Thank you, Chair. Medway Council has published a Hackney Carriage and Private Hire policy since April 2016. The document is reviewed every 5 years and the current policy expires on the 31st of April 2026. A draft policy, table of changes and proposed consultation methodology was presented to Cabinet on the 18th of November 2025. At this meeting, Cabinet approved the consultees and methodology and granted delegated authority to the Assistant Director Legal and Governance in consultation with the portfolio holder for Community Safety, Highways and Enforcement. A 6-week consultation period took place between the 2nd of December 2025 and the 13th of January 2026. During this consultation period, we received 11 responses from individuals and 1 from the local trade association. The local trade association conducted a survey of their own and received 113 individual responses, which assisted them with compiling their response. Following evaluation of the responses, there are minimal recommended changes to the policy. The current draft policy can be found at Appendix A on pages 21 to 107. All consultation responses, officer comments, and any recommended changes to the draft policy can be found in a table at Appendix B on pages 109 to 120. Included within their response, the Trade Association provided some cost breakdowns. These can be found at Appendix C on pages 121 to 122. The survey responses for the Trade Association can be found at the supplementary agenda. Any comments, proposed amendments or recommendations will be detailed in the minutes for this meeting and presented to the Assistant Director of Legal and Governance and the portfolio holder for Community Safety, Highways and Enforcement, alongside the draft policy and consultation responses for a final decision to be made and for the new policy to be implemented from the 1st of May 2026. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. And that brings, just for clarity, the MOTDA part has come in on the supplementary, not in the full pack. Nigel, that's why we invite you. You emailed myself and the Vice Chair and asked permission to come tonight. And you got some comments, but do you want to start with that one first because it was missed out, right?
Yeah, obviously, the MLTDA did conduct a survey after the busy Christmas period. We do seem to have all these consultations when we're the busiest time of our working career, should we say. So we conducted a survey for 1 week. We emailed 261 MLTDA members. We got 113 responses in 1 week. The survey is attached as the additional section on the bottom. So obviously, when the last policy was introduced, immediately after the policy was introduced, there was 4 key items which were brought to the attention of the MLTDA that drivers were specifically not happy about at all. Those four topics were then included in the survey and the survey results in order for us to confidently say this is what the trade believes needs to change. The 4 topics obviously are the vehicle age limit, the door signs, SB 30 points on your licence for speeding, etc., and licence revocations for 6 or more penalty points, and the DVLA licence, the private hire colour change to the vehicles. Am I okay to go into more detail, Chair, on these topics? Or yeah,
it's just yeah, of course, because there'll be members that haven't even got to that supplementary agenda. Just the explanation is that just so members know, you said to us that it wasn't in the original agenda that went out, was it? Your comments.
Absolutely. I mean, previously when the MLTDA submitted a consultation response, the whole consultation response is normally put onto a public on the website as one document, so you can read the whole response. The way it's been broken down, I mean, I've got the copy of the whole response here. There's paragraphs missing, there's bits and pieces missing out of the full consultation response submitted, and obviously the MLTDA survey results were completely excluded from the online part of the website.
Thanks, Nigel. Can I go over to Emily or Katie just to explain to members how bits were missing and things were not we have always put consultations. Why didn't they go into the full pack?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so we can only basically give our apologies. So the information that has come through on the supplementary, I will put my hands up. I didn't even see it in the response, so that's completely my fault. However, I would consider that the information that's within the individual responses, the 113 responses, have been summarised by Nigel within his main response that has been evaluated and is in the main report. I have picked up on another bit that Nigel did mention about a section of the age criteria response that he put in was missing, and again, completely my fault. But sort of quite thankfully, it was just quoting what the policy states rather than making an opinion as such at that point.
So you know, all consultation should go in there. So basically, we just missed it, even though it was quite a large consultation.
So the main aspects of the MLTDA's response to our consultation are included in our table, response table, and have been evaluated. The bits that have not been added to the original report were the responses that the MLTDA received directly and that they then culminated into their main 4 responses.
So, you know, from moving forward, we don't want to be going down that road again. We should have everything put into those documents like they have been before. But before I move to you, Nigel, Katie, I know you summarised the report. What's the main differences on this policy?
So before the consultation occurred, in the policy wording, the penalty point section that Nigel referred to has been amended to 6 or more points. Oh, sorry. Sorry. More than 6 points. It's because I wrote 6 or more, sorry. More than 6 points. There was a paragraph added under the executive summary in relation to the Equalities Act. So that has, I can say that sentence if you wish, sir. Yeah. And then there was an amendment to a penalty point, P51, just to add, it was just to ensure more safety and comfort to passengers, and that was just amended. Yeah.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Emily. Nigel, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I would just like, obviously, to discuss the four main topics just briefly, because I don't want to go into too much detail and drag this meeting out for 2 hours, which I could quite easily do. I don't think anyone would love me for that. So with the vehicle age criteria, I just want to refer to the Department of Transport best practice guidance. And it specifically states, and this is the direct quote from the Department of Transport guidance, and it says the setting of an arbitrary age limit may be inappropriate, counterproductive, and result in higher costs to the trade and ultimately passengers. And it also states that licensing authorities should not impose age limits on licensed vehicles. Instead, they should consider more targeted requirements to meet their policy objectives on emissions. So with that said, with the Department of Transport guidance, we've got an age limit of 10 years on a licensed vehicle, whereas the Department of Transport are saying that's arbitrary. You shouldn't make arbitrary decisions like that. So in that respect, you know, all new vehicles since the 2021 policy was introduced do meet Euro 6 standards. The previous policy did state that a vehicle would be continued to license to, you know, as long as it meets the correct standards and is in exceptional condition. There is several councils around the country which have different age limits on vehicles. Some have removed them completely. The question obviously the response to the question within that licensing drew up mentioned that it was conflicting. I can't remember the exact wording without looking at it in the form, but it was conflicting that it could be interpreted in certain ways what is deemed exceptional condition. There is several authorities. I mean, I've got a printout one I just printed off this afternoon. It's just a council in Northamptonshire that gives quite a good definition of what they consider an exceptional condition. And just for example, only last week, Derby Council removed the age limit from first licence from 5 years to 9 years and extended the upper age limit of a licensed vehicle to 15. So The next question, the next part of the Derby policy states that that vehicle, once it reaches 15 years old, will be continued to be licensed, provided it meets exceptional standards. So in that respect, as long as the driver keeps his vehicle in a sound, roadworthy, fit for purpose condition, that vehicle could be licensed continually. Because at the moment we have cars licensed under the previous policy which have grandfather rights that are still on the road over 10 years. Vehicles licensed since the 2021 policy have a 10-year age limit imposed on them, which has major repercussions. Obviously, I've got drivers come through to me that they can only afford to buy a second-hand car when they're replacing a vehicle. One chap, for example, he's bought a car that he can license for 4 years until he reaches the 10-year age limit. However, his finance, he can only afford to take that over 5 years. So what happens to that individual when his vehicle is no longer licensed? He'd be paying 2 lots of finance. You know, and that's not constructive to, I mean, I get we need to ensure public safety, and the vehicles are MOT'd and inspected, but why impose a 10-year age limit? Why have we got that in place?
Thank you, Nigel. So going over there, I mean, you know, I think we've had this, Martin, we've had this conversations quite a few times, and I see it's come back again tonight around the age limits. It's a fair point around the age limit. If a vehicle is in good condition, your enforcement, you're checking the condition, checking the quality, and it's passing its tests. Why have we set a 10-year age limit?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, I suppose ultimately it's a member decision, so just officers don't decide or influence the policy. I suppose is what I'd come back with that. Yes, it's true. Some authorities do have their policies do focus on exceptional condition and standards. There are also many, I'd argue more in my knowledge, that do have age limits. I think from a regulatory perspective, you can have a policy that specifies what exceptional circumstances are. I think there'll be members around the room that know from other similar policies that that is near impossible to define. The size of the Medway trade is such that inspections are carried out by authorised garages. So we are reliant on them being able to apply our policy accurately and consistently. I suggest that would be made very difficult if we allow discretion in terms of determining what exceptional is, what good is. You know, if it's when does damage past a threshold to become something where the license shouldn't be issued, it would be a near infinite, you know, number of considerations to have. Setting age limits, whilst it does, you know, somewhat limit some people's ability to enter or remain in the trade, it is a clear way of ensuring that standards are likely to be maintained, that emission limits are likely to be set, that the quality and calibre of licensed vehicle across the Medway towns is suitably high. And so I think that those are just considerations that I'd say should be kept in mind, Chair.
Thank you. And you know, I think I suppose what I'm saying is why we just pick 10 out of the air, you know. I think Councillor Prenter, come in.
Yeah, just about the age, really. The taxi trade locally is under pressure. And there are other users, which I don't want to use the name in this here, but the reputation are they are newer vehicles than the trade. However, this is a safety committee, so it's about standards. So I think, are we doing the age thing for a commercial reason that we want our taxis to be new, or are we making this decision based on safety? Because it's about safety. I'm not sure the age actually matters. It should be about, does the standards of the exceptional standard need to go up to ensure that whatever the age of that vehicle is, it is of good standard inside and out. I mean, out will be the MOT, obviously, but you have the extra test as a taxi, obviously, as a Hackney carriage test. So that's what I'm a bit confused. Are we making this decision based on commercial reasons that we want the taxis to look nice? Or are we doing it on safety that they should be safe? Because if that's the case, then to me, the age doesn't overly matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Printer. Mark, I mean, we have been here, haven't we? Like I say, where we've argued this as a committee before when there was trying to be a set age number. Do you want to answer, Councillor Printer?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, the Chair is absolutely correct. We've considered this, well, the committee have considered this point, I'd suggest probably every time since I've been involved, that the policy's been reviewed. I think, you know, again, yes, the fundamental reason for the taxi and private hire licensing regime is public safety. That is a fact. I think the decision has been reached by members before that having age criteria does deliver that objective. But of course, it's, you know, we're in a position where that's able to be reconsidered. I don't really have an opinion on it, to be honest, Chair, beyond that.
Right. Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Peake, I will come back to you, Nigel, and I'll come over to Councillor.
I just want to throw my weight behind what Councillor Printer just said. When I saw the thing about the age limit, I did wonder, what is the point of having an age limit approach? Maybe it's more convenient and easier to enforce that, but we all know that there's there's a difference in the way people look after vehicles. It can be somebody that hesitates to get their vehicle fixed in time, long-term damage, but it's younger, and you could have an older car when somebody's always on the mark, getting the vehicle fixed very quickly and keeping it in prime condition. So surely, if it's about safety rather than looks, it is how the condition of the vehicle, and especially the engine, rather than just age. And so therefore, the idea of an age limit in itself, to me, really doesn't have any value. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Peake. Councillor Sands.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Nigel, and thank you for the report. I have to say that I think the age limit on the cars now is outdated. I think we've moved on. Cars have moved on. Technology's moved on. We know they have 2 tests a year. There's always a chance of a spot check. And they're professional drivers, and this is the tools of their trade. So they look after them. And so I totally agree that it's an arbitrary a time limit. You could pick anything out of the air, but I don't think we need it now.
Thank you, Councillor Sands. Councillor Jackson, I do want to come back to Nigel.
Yeah, this is just a quick one. As somebody uses taxis probably at least twice a day, I see a variety of taxis, and yeah, I don't really think age has got. Like, I've been in newer taxis that I've been a bit more worried about. Like, do you know what I mean? I see a wide range of them, and if anything, it's getting harder to get taxis. So I think if it's meaning that people are having to give up the tools of their trade and can't do it anymore, I think that's a shame.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Nigel, so the suggestion from the association was no age, or what are you saying on from your research?
Yeah, I mean, basically, obviously, speaking to the trades, listening to all the feedback, it's based around the 10-year age limit that was introduced, and obviously, we've had a policy for years previous to that, several policies which have had no age restriction imposed on the trade. The age restriction, but we are imposing removing the age restriction. The other things that I would suggest to the committee, that if we are concerned as a licensing authority about safety, that once a vehicle reaches a certain age or mileage, for example, that it has an extra MOT, you know, to ensure that vehicle is safe to be on the road, to ensure public safety. There's options available to the committee and the licensing authority to ensure public safety.
Thank you, Nigel. I mean, Mark, I'm kind of convinced that obviously anyone can answer. You can all jump in. We've gone without the age limit up to now, and we've not had no major issues with that, because your enforcement team do pick up any issues when you're checking, when you're twice a year, like you say, or, you know, one of the biggest things is what everyone's saying around the table. We look for the safety of the driver as well, not just the vehicle. You want both, don't you? They can have a brand new car and not be driving safely. So, anything else to add on that, or do you want us to come back to that afterwards as a committee on this one? Anyone else want to add?
only to confirm, Chair, that of course, we'll put in place whatever the will of members, and when it's signed off by the portfolio holder and assistant of legal and governance, we'll make it happen. So
I was just trying to see whether you wanted to add anything into it, or
I think it
meet
would be,
halfway or anything
it
like
would
that.
be challenging. It will add challenges to the officers and the garages. It will. So it will be additional burdens. It I'm sure will result in a reduction in standards.
What the additional burden? But we haven't had a limit. We didn't have limits over the years, did we?
Well, I think thinking back, one of the reasons why the decision was made to put it in place is because of noticeable lacks of poor standards that weren't being picked up and maintained. There was a reason why it was adopted previously, but ultimately we'll make whatever happen that needs to happen. Yeah.
Councillor Brennan, want to come in on last one on this one?
Yeah, just really a technical question, really. This policy comes to us every 5 years, or comes to this committee every 5 years. If we make the change, whether changing the age or taking the age away, we'd have to wait 5 years before we could review it and change it. Is that correct? But we would have 5 years worth of data or of whether the trade has kept up the standard even without the age, or whatever the outcome of that. Is that correct?
So as a general rule, it's 5 years, but if a case were made, there's nothing stopping us bringing the policy back. And with the possible of LGR, it's going to change at some point with that, if that all goes ahead anyway. So,
Blimey, yeah, I think, but also the committee can call back the policy at any time with concerns. So,
yeah, thank you. I was hoping to get through a meeting without LGR being mentioned, but you've damned it. No, thank you. That gives me more reassurance that it can come back. We don't have to wait a whole 5 years if the trade doesn't. I'm sure they will. I'm not suggesting, Nigel's association, I'm sure we'll keep the standards up. But if the standards really did start falling off a cliff edge, that we could bring the policy back, that gives me more comfort.
Okay, so if members keep that in your mind for the moment, do you want to come back, Councillor Fern?
Yeah, thank you, Jack. Just picking up on what Mark said, I'm afraid I'm probably more with that the vehicles should be renewed more often. I get what everyone's saying, and I know I'm the odd one out here, but I do think safety standards are important. But vehicles move on, and emissions become less. Look where we are now compared where we were 10, 12 years ago. Vehicles are much more economical, environmentally friendly. So I do think we need to keep that standard. But to pick up on the point that Mark just made about the additional administration, is there a cost? Is there going to be extra costs? I think before we agree to something, something that we haven't budgeted for, how can we afford it as a council? Or what additional administration is there?
I think just to be clear, I don't know if one of you guys want to mention, but we don't pay for the drivers do their testing as well and have to do all their own. Don't cost us. They have to do all their own. I think Mark was talking about resourcing, but we haven't had that issue when we haven't had that. Yeah, but it's the drivers to make sure. I mean, it goes back to resourcing again. I don't want to go down that road again, but you've got your enforcement officer out there. One thing I was saying, this, Councillor Fern, what Mark, what you've just said about these, you're seeing it a lot more. I haven't seen it any licensing hearing. I haven't seen it any taxi driver hearing about the state of their vehicle. So it'd be interesting to get stats around that and see. But I haven't seen that as an issue when I've got drivers in front of me. I've seen it more about their driving or standards of driving, not so much, or what they forgot to do, not so much about the vehicle. Do you want to just touch on the additional and extra checks, because they do 2 a year and all that? So I don't.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I was suggesting that not that there is a problem now, but that I think that's a reason why we brought in an age policy, and that I would expect potentially those problems to recur if that policy changes, because of my original point about how you define condition then in any policy. And so it's not about, I don't think we'd be looking for extra checks to happen, but only that I would expect that the mechanics that are carrying out those checks at garages on our behalf will not be able to apply a consistent policy of condition, which will result in vehicles being on the streets in a worse condition, and which officers won't, you won't see all 600-700 vehicles driving around at any one time to manage those. That was more my point.
Councillor Brown.
I have a couple of questions about this additional checking. We've just let, as far as I understand, you've just either renewed a contract or let a contract with some good garages for this inspection to go on. You must have had a specification in which they bid towards. And anybody who's licensed to do MOT does tests and uses equipment. I get a result on my MOT on an 11-year-old vehicle, the same as I got on it when it was 9. But I'm confused as to why, if they're inspecting an 11-year-old vehicle or a 9-year-old vehicle, that they don't inspect to the same standards. I would have expected those standards are written down in the contract somewhere. And maybe that they have to do additional checks. But as Councillor MacDonald said, that's going to hit the pocket of the person having the test done, not the council. Can you just explain about the second test, because it's obviously as rigorous, at least, as an MOT?
Yes, so there is a specification that they adhere to. I suppose I can't quantify it, and to be clear, I don't have a personal view in terms of whether there should or shouldn't be an age restriction and what that should be. I'm merely just trying to furnish the committee with my thoughts on it. And I guess that there's just a certain part of logic, I feel, in saying that newer vehicles are less likely to be or are likely to be in a better condition than 20-year-old vehicles, purely by virtue of the amount of time that they've been exposed to the road and the environment and users, and that therefore potentially increases the likelihood that more vehicles will pass through with some damage. It's just a general observation rather than anything I can quantify.
I will say you've always had that, every time this has come back, you've always had a very open mind on it. And I suppose we don't want a fleet of cars 20 or 25 years old out there. And if a driver if a driver goes for that test and the car doesn't pass, driver has to sort it out or get a new car, do whatever they have to do. I think Nigel, we need to move on to the other items very quickly, but was there a middle ground that you think is it 15 years is the average life of a car that's being, because you are, it's true what Councillor Fern said, they are going at, every single day. So was there a middle ground that you was looking at?
Well, it's something that's very difficult to gauge. You've got some drivers which will do 10,000 miles a year. You've got other drivers that will do 40,000 miles a year. Someone will work part-time, someone will work full-time and beyond. So that's something that there's not a middle ground, provided these vehicles are an acceptable standard. Just for example, there's a chap that was pulled over by an enforcement officer. His vehicle was licensed under the previous policy, and this is the kind of enforcement work which is really beneficial, and the kind of work which the licensing team do. He had scratches on his bumper. The licensing enforcement officer said, right, I want a new bumper, so he had to go and buy a new bumper, resprayed, he put it on the vehicle in order to retain the licence. So the standards are being enforced by licensing, and obviously that's just in routine enforcement. So I can't see there being any middle ground with an age limit. It's purely down to the licensing enforcement and the drivers ensuring that the vehicles are 100% ready for public use.
Okay, thanks, Nigel. The other topics on Councillor Brake.
Thank you, thank you, Dan. Interesting comments concerning this particular issue. But just looking at page 39 or 59, whichever we want, for design requirements, in particular 4.1.5 says of a vehicle be in excellent condition throughout, inside and outside, aesthetically, physically, structurally and mechanically, and in full working order. And that to me is a statement that says this is the requirement of, and the standard required of all of the vehicles that are on the road applying for hackney carriage or private hire. And I think age in this day and age regarding vehicle manufacture, and that really has been something I've been involved in my whole working career. Looking at vehicles, the way technology has moved on, the vehicle could be 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years before it's deemed to be come to the end of its life. So that would be my contribution.
Thank you, Councillor Brake. That's great. Thank you. Nigel, want to move on to briefly to the other ones?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, obviously, I'm going to summarise these in a lot shorter time because I appreciate, you know, it's getting on now. The second issue that the trade wanted to bring to the committee and licensing authorities' attention is the door signs, operator door signs. We've got multiple operators which are now combined into one company. So door signs are looking a bit like a takeaway menu at the moment. The question I would like to ask is, do you feel that these are necessary when the majority of the big operators, i.e. Vokes, ABC, CNC, etc., private hire operators, if a booking is received through them, it's a computerised dispatch, so the customer will get a text message with the vehicle details, 9 times out of 10, the driver's name, etc. A lot of drivers are saying that they're no longer necessary and fit for, you know, the standard livery on a licensed vehicle.
Who would like to answer that one?
So we are aware within our enforcement that there are issues with keeping door signs on the vehicles. I know Nigel has mentioned it in his response. So it is a problem that the trade are having, but again, it's in there as a safety requirement. But also it assists my officers as well when they've got a car going past them when they're out doing enforcement. They might not be able to see the plate, but they can see the door sign, so they'd be able to pick up different things from that. But again, as Marcus said, with the age criteria, it's a matter of the committee to comment on and then for a final decision to be made, and we will implement what's decided. But it's the safety issue that was first the reason for it.
And what's the penalty point for is it 6, is it? 9? I think it's 9, isn't it? Or 9 is being put out there. It's all right, don't worry. If you have a look for that moment and come back to me. Councillor Sands.
Thank you, Chair. The door sign thing, I think, is our Hackney cars are all white. They have a massive, great taxi sign on the top. And so I don't see the point of them having door signs. However, I think for private hire, because of the other taxi services coming into the area, private hire cars who don't have that sign on the top, it does allow people to identify them when they're waiting. That would be my place.
Any other comments? Councillor Jackson.
Just on a safety issue, I know, and I take your point that things are moving on and we are getting the taxis come through. But I know late night, if I'm getting off at Strood and I've ordered a taxi to pick me up from the station, I quite like knowing if there's a couple of taxis really quickly, so I'm not having to get my phone out and shuffle around. But I do understand that, you know, the issue, but I'm just, as a female late at night, they're quite.
Yeah, I completely get what you're saying, but the problem is you've got, for example, Vokes, Wimble, Raynham cabs, iCabs, Strood cabs, computer cabs, all one company. You got a guy. I had a classic example. A guy booked through the iCabs number. It also gets answered in the office as "Hello, iCabs. How can I help you?" I turn up there with computer cabs door signs on. He said, well, I'm not getting in your car because I didn't book with you, but computer cabs is part of the same group. It was, so from a public safety point of view, I get it. He didn't want to get in the vehicle because it wasn't the company he booked with, but it's all part of the same group. So I've got to have 6 door signs on my vehicle in order to cover that one operator's work. And it can be a bit of a mishmash.
I mean, I suppose some of the trade, though, benefit from the advertising of signs, don't they, Nigel? They will, because their company's all over it, isn't it? So it's a bit of a... But I know there is an issue with them staying on. They fall off, right? Did we find out how many points it is?
So yeah, I think some of the trade have magnetic ones, but we're obviously a lot of the new vehicles are just not magnetic. So they're having to then purchase more permanent signage, which then can in turn damage the vehicle if it needs removing, or if you work for 3 different cabs and depending on who your operators, whoever you're working with. So I think I understand where the problems are coming that they are experiencing.
Did we find out the points?
So we've not got one specifically for door signs, but there is about signage, and that is 4 points.
Any other comments on this one for a minute? Nigel, do you want to move on to your next one?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Chair. The next issue is the SP30 offences, which are minor offences. Obviously, yes, an SP30 offence is exceeding a statutory speed limit on a public road. Obviously, an SP50 is a motorway, so we're talking about minor offences. We've had a lot of incidents where drivers have occurred 6 points on their DVLA licence, and licensing rightly, according to the policy, have revoked their licence with immediate effect. So, you know, a driver is trying to earn a living, and by no fault of his own, and it's something that I don't think is, you know, let's try to bring the best way to put this. It's something that can happen to any driver in that respect. And a driver that is put out of work, and sometimes, if they're fortunate enough to get their licence back, if they appeal at committee, out of work for several months. That financial hardship as well with, you know, you're trying to run a business. So we're taking away drivers' licences for having 6 points on their DVLA licence, which I get because we're all about public safety. Any major speeding offence or any major traffic violation, I completely agree. But I'm specifically talking to SP30, which are minor speeding offences on public roads. So i.e. 24 in a 20 zone or something like that. So my suggestion is, and the trade suggestion is, that we take a slightly different approach. I don't agree with letting a driver occur 12 points in a DVLA licence, because we're here to protect the public, you know, and the drivers have to maintain a professional standard. But there is a couple of options which could be looked at to basically take a different approach on this. So if a driver gets more than 6 points on his licence, a suspension may be advisable as a policy requirement until that driver has performed an advanced driving test or something of that standard to ensure that he is safe to drive on the roads, which will then stop the driver having his licence revoked and potentially being put out of work permanently. And obviously, once a driver has his licence revoked, he won't be able to apply to any other licensing authority in the whole country because of the register, because it will flag up that he's had his licence revoked. So from that point, a lot of councils around the country have also removed this from their policy and made amendments. And I'm just obviously, the trade would like to put forward that we discuss this and talk about it and think about the best way forward from, one, protecting the public, but two, ensuring that standards are kept and drivers are not unnecessarily put out of work, but, you know, we've got a bit more of a protection on the licensed driver, because these offences can occur very easily if you take your eye off the ball. And we're only talking about the minor offences, as I say.
Would the team like to respond to that? About statutory and everything else you need to know?
Yeah, so minor offences, I understand as a general rule, are 3 penalty points. So prior to the consultation, we did update the DVLA section of the policy, so it's now more than 6. So you could, in essence, get 2 speeding offences and you'd still keep your licence now. And then, so it would then be over that, it would then be looked into. And as with every case. Everything's looked at as an individual situation, and we still do that.
So I think that's they've looked at that already. The only message I would ask you to bring back to your drivers is to notify the licensing team when they get these points, because that's what causes them more problems, I think. But that's a good. Your next one, Nigel.
Yes, you'll be pleased to know this is the last one.
Always good to see you, Nigel.
No, the last one refers to, and I appreciate that when the policy was reviewed in 2021, that the committee and the licensing officers discussed at length vehicle colour. And obviously, I'm going to refer to Department of Transport best practice guidance again. Just a few quotes that all Hackney carriages vehicles must be identifiable to the public for immediate hire, which makes sense. You need to know that that vehicle is licensed and it's licensed by Medway Council. However, the Department of Transport states that a private hire vehicle not apply for hire, licensing authorities should not impose a livery that confuse private hire vehicle with a Hackney carriage vehicle. So in that respect, we've got a white for Hackney carriage, red across the board for private hire. It's exceedingly difficult now to get a red vehicle. The red is not as common as white. That there's drivers out there that want to, and you know, I get it, completely move the white colour for Hackney carriage, because we've got the top light livery, we've got the door signs, for example, we've got the plate on the back, which also says Medway Council. Gravesham themselves don't have a specific colour for Hackney carriage, but the majority of the trade understand that Hackney carriage have to be publicly visible as a Hackney carriage and licensed by Medway Council, and that is the colour of white. But with private hire, there's no need to have them all red. So the biggest problem with someone coming into the industry is the cost of the vehicle in the first place. But the cost of the vehicle on top of trying to find a red one can cause massive issues. I mean, I've had drivers that have had to go all the way to Manchester, for example, to pick up a car, because that was the only one they could find in red at the time. And so it's a big restriction. So the proposal from the trade was that we review the colour of the private hire vehicles to include any colour apart from white, which would then still distinguish the Hackney carriage and the private hire, but would then give the trade more flexibility on vehicle choice when the Department of Transport states that, you know, they don't have to be visible like a Hackney carriage does.
Nigel, can I just ask, I don't mind putting myself on the line here, because Mark will remember a very, very strong debate we had here over the colours of cars. Do you remember? You remember it when we did, I think Diane had to step in at the time, but has that changed then? Because I remember when I sat on the side benches arguing heavily for the drivers to keep the white and to keep the red. So has it changed now with regards to the red then? Because my immediate concern is you're going to change the colours is what is so people recognise it, and then we might also then take the signs off. So you can't have both, do you know? So I'm right, and I'm right. We did have I remember me and Mandy having that big debate. But, you know, has it changed now then? Are you saying, because members here will know, I'm always keen on people knowing our livery, even if it's private or what, because I want us to always be identifiable and making sure that we're proud of our licensed and, you know, like both sides of it, private hire and the taxi. So Hackney carriage. So I just want to, is it changed?
Yeah, well, obviously things have changed in the last 5 years. The dynamics of the industry is in decline, and it's struggling. But there is also a very top-heavy number in the fleet of Hackney carriage. Private hire, or unrestricted private hire, is a minimal part of the fleet. Which then obviously, if you've got everyone as a Hackney carriage driver, so you've got 400 licensed Hackney carriage vehicles and you've only got 30 Hackney carriage ranks spaces, we've got a massive problem. And everyone's competing for the same pool of work. The operators themselves have come forward and say, well, we can't cover the work because people are sitting on taxi ranks refusing our work. And you get that because you're sitting there waiting for a train to come in. You're not going to pull off the station to go and drive 3 miles to cover a job that they've taken as a booking. Whereas a private hire would, they'd be constantly on the go covering the work. So it's basically been proposed that we change the private hire colour to any colour to assist the trade with moving forwards to encourage private hires into the industry. and obviously grow the fleet and make that more cost effective, because even Department of Transport states that we don't have to be publicly identifiable as a private hire.
So, Mark, can I put you on the spot? I don't presume you have any real. You don't really won't mind, do you? On the Hackney's one thing, because I wouldn't want that ever to change, because I fought for about an hour and a half on that one. So, but the private hire, right? You're not that fussed, right?
Just looking down the line for any opposing views. I think from an officer perspective, Chair, we can say it really doesn't matter to us. We don't think it would make a significant difference. And I think
But the signage, I don't think you'd be able to get the both, because the signage would be your identifiable mark on that, wouldn't it?
Yes, I think that. I mean, dare I say that removing the colour requirements would provide, additional options for vehicles to the trade, which could in turn offset the need to remove age limits. But I do think that signage is a key part of identification for public identification and licensing officer identification.
I was just going to say, obviously, the private hires also have the checker along the side, so we'd also need to consider, if we took away the red, would the checker work on every coloured vehicle?
Because you're talking about any colour, you're not talking about just, I'll come back to you, you're not talking about a selection of certain colours, are we? We're talking about any colour. Councillor Brake?
Thank you. It just occurred to me that a change in colour after many years of having white and red will in fact require us to, and in fact the trade, to make sure that the community at large are aware of the change, and it's something that just can't be swapped over overnight. But somebody's going to have to spend money in educating our community that there has been a change.
And just to be clear, thanks, Councillor Brake, but just to be clear, we're not changing the Hackney carriage. That's still white. This is only the private hire, and the companies would need to be telling their spending the money and telling their customers on that. But I'm sure something could go out on Medway Council website and stuff, wouldn't it? Who knows? Yeah, okay. So is that okay? Is that all of your points?
Yeah,
so go on, Nigel.
So yeah, thank you, Chair. And obviously, one other thing I just wanted to mention about the knowledge test. Thank you for your comments in the report here. I'll ping you an email. We'll just sit down and have a chat. I'll probably copy in a couple of any interested parties, just so we can get our point across and we'll open up a little bit of discussion on this. And I appreciate officers' time is very precious, so it will be a very short, contained meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel. And I think, because normally we'd spend a long time where you'd be, I think there has been a lot of simplifying and sorting out the policy, which has been really. I'm going to go. So, members, I'm going to help you with this one. I think, Nigel, we've knocked out the speeding one, because I think that's already been addressed. And that's still a really important safety aspect. I think we need to keep the eye on. It is something that members do stress and the licensing team. I know when we come to hearing, if they have been made to wait a while, it's unfortunate for everyone, and that is certainly stress. So that one's taken out. If I go backwards, I'm just going to see if there's any disapproval. If I'm going backwards around, so starting with the private hire and being a different colour to red, is there any objections to that from members? But with the signage and with the checker. Councillor Sand? Yeah, with the signage and the checker. But there can be ongoing discussions with the team on that going forward. The private hire only, not the, don't slip in a different colour for the Hackney carriage. And then we're coming then to the signage. But I think I think we've already moved that on, because if we're talking about a change of colours, we're going to have to keep. It's something I maybe with the team and the trade to have a discussion, because I know these signs are falling off and I know they're being penalised for it, but sometimes they can't help it. And I think there needs to maybe a discussion with the trade and that around how they can achieve that. So that's the signage one done. I think we're now coming to the vehicle age and the no limit. I think, you know, I think the points have been made. I think there is a more of a majority saying that if the cars are kept well and they're inspected properly and you follow the procedures and everything is clear and they're not being seen to be really poor, then, you know, I don't see why we are setting an age limit on it, for especially the 10-year one. I don't see it. Come back, Councillor
Thank you,
Fern.
Chair. Just ask one question to Nigel, if that's okay. I mean, if the age limit's removed, you know, how do you anticipate any issue with your competitor, really, not using the trade?
No, to be honest with you, you've got, say, double standard of licensing at the moment. You've got vehicles which were licensed previously before the 21 policy, which are the vehicles on the road basically over 10 years old now. And there's no complaints from the customer about those vehicles. So I can't see there being any issue moving forwards with removing the age limit on any licensed vehicle.
And just my final point, you know, we promote, you know, healthy, happy, better Medway. We're sort of going against that if we remove this. So I'm not going to support that, I'm afraid. But I do understand the point that everybody's made, but that's my personal point, and I can't support that.
There's no problem. There's no problem. People can go. Mark, did you want to come in? You said a minute on that.
Thank you, Chair. It was only just to make a point, if I may, that with these points, I was not too bold of me to say this, but we're just to remind members that I think Nigel said 113 drivers responded. Just to bear in mind that's 113 drivers out of the entire trade. The MLTDA don't respectfully cover the entire trade, and that those responses were given to leading questions which specifically asked, do you want to keep these particular elements? So just to balance out the views that the rest of the whole Medway trade didn't raise these as concerns.
But the good thing is, I totally get it, and we have to note that the only good thing is during lots of consultations you have done, at least the MLTDA do come back with answers when others can't even be bothered to come back.
Which is great, yeah.
Councillor Fern?
Yeah, I was just going to pick up, you know, we sort of went a little bit off really after Katie gave us the report. The first point, and I'll just quickly say it now, you know, that the report's 87, the policy's 87 pages long. Can I just make that request in future, like we do in other policies, that we highlight the points? You know, I did actually print these 87 pages off and I went through it and I've seen the changes, but can we highlight that in the report? It just make it so much easier for us and, you know, run alongside. So that's the first point. I've forgotten the second one now. So
Can I just say that, but I did ask Katie, I did put her on the spot and she come straight out with when I said what were the changes, you come straight out with that very quickly. So it's right. I mean, something on the covering report just to say this is what we have changed on it. But you did answer that.
And the second point, you know, obviously we've gone out to consultation and Nigel and you know, the trade, the MLTD have responded. You know, a lot of them have responded, and it's like doing a staff engagement survey, isn't it? You know, if you say, well, you know, what's the issues in your workplace, and everybody responds, you do absolutely nothing about it, it's completely pointless, and then, you know, potentially they're not going to respond again. So I do think we should take the points he's made, sort of, you know, consider them, and I think you've done a good job tonight in doing that, Dan, so well done.
Can I just say, Councillor Brake made a good point as well around the vehicle and stuff. It was a really good, you know, on that point in the paper. Nigel, do you think drivers, I mean, you know, I can see about not having an age limit, and, you know, I'm with you on that. I think sometimes, though, for the licensing team and for others, because I looked to Councillor Fern as well, and he wasn't necessarily against the, you know, even if we set a 15-year limit on the car, that we're meeting the drivers at some point there, aren't we, rather than a 10-year, aren't we? Because I don't see many out with 15 or 16 or 18-year-old cars anyway. Would you see that would be us? Because I think there would be more, because remember, this has to go through the cab, this has to go through council and everything else. So, you know, the commercial part, which Councillor Prentice was saying, you know, everything else about the vehicle and the drivers, do you think that would meet you halfway?
To be fair, it's not a very simple one to answer. You've got drivers out there that are of retirement age, which come out and provide a good service during the day, and they do that specifically. They don't need to earn a living, or some do. So they're part-time drivers. They look after their cars. They do very little mileage on them. These drivers, I've had drivers come through to me with the 10-year age limit saying, well, once my vehicle's up for plate next year and it expires, that's me done. And it's a real shame to lose drivers which have been working in the industry many years purely on a financial basis. Obviously, vehicles do expire. They don't last forever. They will get eventually replaced. And it's purely a financial burden that at the moment, this is why the cost tables were included, that we are not earning the money that we need to buy new vehicles on a regular basis. You know, I've just done 15 months of working 7 days a week. Yeah. I don't want to continue doing that, but it's something that I will have to. And if I have to replace my vehicle or it gets written off tomorrow, I'd probably leave the industry. And that's the harsh facts and the reality of the industry at the moment, unfortunately.
Thanks, Nigel. I mean, have I got consensus around? Can I do it before we go to a vote? Obviously, is the agreement to remove the age limit? Have I got consensus for that around the committee here? Obviously, me and Councillor Fern. No, I know you've already said that, but we've got the consensus otherwise around the table to do that. Okay, okay, Vice Chair.
The committee considered the draft policy and provided comments or recommendations and amendments to the Assistant Director of Legal and Governance and the Portfolio Holder for Community Safety, Highways and Enforcement for consideration. These were particularly around the age of the vehicle, which there is consensus, but with some dissent, around us removing that. So we make a formal proposal to remove it.
Yeah.
So formally,
Comments to the cabinet, so and the portfolio.
yeah,
so,
with the recommendation that we remove the age. Then we come on to the signage. The signage has to remain on the private hire vehicles because that is the identifier. Yeah. Now we come on to the colours of the private hire vehicles, which are currently red and we're limited to red. And there is a proposal that we have any other colour bar white for people who have private hire vehicles. Is that agreed?
Seconded? Seconded? Agreed, members? Agreed. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for a great report. I know you're against it, yeah. Are you against all of them or are you against the one? Well, we can, you're for the others, but not that one around. We can note that. Nicola will note that. Don't worry, it's fine. It's fine. We note the age limit one is what you defer on. That's what you disagree. And it's good to disagree. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Nigel, as well. And that concludes our meeting this evening. What have I got? Have we got more? Have we? Oh, it'd be down on. Go to item 7, please, Nicola. Review of allocation of committee seats, licensing and safety subcommittees.
Yeah, it's just for noting, and if anyone's got any comments or questions, there's no officer introduction needed.
Is there any comments on item 7? No, so we are finished. Thank you very much. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you, members. Have a good evening. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you.